You're listening to the 14th Source for all geeky and nerdy news and discussion, which means that you're listening to a podcast.
For all intents and purposes.
I am D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And we are your two overeducated, codependent nerd hosts, bringing you the things that we like to talk about, but filtered through inquisitive and critical lenses in the episode for Friday. I almost said June. November 19th, 2020, because what is time? We say that's our new refrain, actually. Sorry. November 19th, 2021. And actually, speaking of existential dread, I've actually learned that Lovecraftian cosmic horror is alive and well, Andrew, with a recent find on one of your preferred platforms, Twitter.
Uh-oh.
So I saw on Twitter this YouTube video making the rounds, and people just responding with their own sort of, like I said, existential dread as they listen to it. And the video they're responding to is this, Andrew. Let me read you we don't need to sample it because, one, it'd be boring, and you'll understand that as soon as I say it. But two, it'd just be kind of weird. But the video that people are responding to is called 1 Hour of Silence, Randomly Interrupted by the Taco Bell Noise, meaning the gong. And people are responding to, I'll try to put the tweet into the show notes, dear listeners, but people saying in response, listening to this is scarier than any horror game. You never know when the Taco Bell noise is coming. You just have to sit in silence, filled with suspense. Truly horrifying. Another person said, 2.5 minutes in, and I'm literally shaking and crying. This is terrifying. And the last person said, I had this playing in my background by accident and kept wondering where the sound was coming from. Truly horrifying. I'm like, you know what? You can make a Lovecraftian space horror movie. You can make a Lovecraftian terror from the deep or ancient civilization movie. But you know what? I think the true spirit of Lovecraft lives in, yet again, 1 hour of silence randomly interrupted by the Taco Bell noise.
Taco Bell.
And you know what? As much as we here on the show, and me personally kind of love the fiction of Lovecraft, maybe that's where his legacy belongs.
Taco Bell?
Taco Bell. Yo quiero Taco Bell. Maybe we don't give enough credit to scary gongs in the background with lots of reverb. I don't know. Maybe there's not enough of that in today's world. But
scary gongs.
Scary gongs. When was the last time you came across a scary gong, Andrew?
It's been a long time.
Well, speaking of scary gongs, at least metaphorically speaking, within an industry, another toll has sounded this week, Andrew.
It has. I'm gonna read a headline from an article.
Please do. A
delightful chat with the most hated man in video games, dated June 14th, 2010. And it's funny because that article is from 11 years ago. And the person they're interviewing is making the news again. So who are we talking about today, Dan?
Bobby Kotick, CEO of Activision Blizzard. Wow, let me say that again. CEO of Activision Blizzard. You can't say that's like judicial and rural. You can't say that name without sounding super drunk. Exactly right. Activision Blizzard. The CEO of Activision Blizzard, Bobby Kotick, is apparently a raging piece of shit.
Well, so for those that don't know, it's made the news this week because there was actually already stuff going on, right? There was already some labor issues. They'd had, some concerns about equity in the workplace. I think some sexual harassment and mistreatment of women. But this week there was actually an article. I think the first article was in the Wall Street Journal that basically talked about just how wretched this guy was, Bobby Kotick.
Wasn't it Activision Blizzard? Jesus, I'm just gonna say Actibliz because that seems to roll off the tongue better, despite being a mouthful. Wasn't Actibliz the company that was being investigated by the state of California?
Yes. Yeah, no, that we talked about that a couple weeks ago or a month or two ago, that the state of California had basically spent like a year or two, like their department of don't mistreat your employees had spent like years investigating Actibliz and then basically brought a big old suit saying like, you mistreat your employees. And it's wild because every time that like they turn the page, it's just like, oh boy, things get worse. So yeah, this week was a Wall Street Journal article. Let me Let me see if I can. Activision Blizzard employee. Let's see. So this was on this was on Monday of this week. So November 15th.
Correct.
15th. Activision CEO Bobby Kotick knew for years about sexual. I should open the article. Sexual misconduct allegations in video game giant. What sexual did he know about, Andrew?
Yeah, that's good. A couple of ways.
But yeah, so that was the article that came out on Monday, and it was within like that day, the board of ActiBliz released a statement saying, "Oh no, we stand by Bobby Kotick. He's A+,
Yeah.
And it's just this thing where it's like, and that kind of, and then I know that there's been basically walkouts. I don't know if it gets to the point of just calling it a strike, but a lot of employees are actually now actively calling for, at this point, I think his resignation.
Yes, exactly.
I also know that some shareholders have also asked for his resignation.
Yep. It's so bad. Even the CEO of PlayStation is like, yo, this guy is a problem. Not that the CEO of PlayStation is a problem himself, but like when a CEO of one of the major consoles basically is like, this guy is shady business, like, it's getting real bad. It's like, next, I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden Bobby Kotick pulls out a fiddle and starts playing it as ActiBliz burns.
Oh, there we go. That's very metaphorical. Metaphorical. I mean, it's wild to me because, as we were kind of getting ready to talk about this, just the realization that like this guy is had a shitty reputation for basically his entire career as CEO.
Right. Again, the article you cited at the beginning was from 11 years ago.
There's another one from 2012 from Kotaku. Please quit photoshopping horns onto Bobby Kotick. It's bad for his dating life. Where apparently he had expressed to the New York Times that it was very concerning that people kept photoshopping devil horns onto him and putting it on the internet, such that the first picture that comes up when you Googled him was him with devil horns. So it's everything about it is pretty bad. And what's funny about it to me, and I think there's a lot that could be talked about. Like, I don't want to sit and dwell on people being mistreated. Everything I've heard about Blizzard in the past couple of years has been already bad. Like, I don't think I've purchased a Blizzard title in 5 ever.
The stuff we're hearing out of Blizzard, since they're such a big company, they're getting a lot of attention, but they're lifting all other shitty boats. And like what we're seeing in the last 5, 6, 7 years is that the behavior at a place like Blizzard is actually kind of endemic to video game development, if not game development, whether tabletop or video game, whether or not comics, whether or not movies. Like, it just seems like this kind of behavior is everywhere, right? And is finally getting a spotlight shown on it, and should we say, getting dealt with in its own way.
Yeah. One thing, I will say that, just to kind of go further to it, Kotaku, I believe Kotaku also published an article this week that was basically like, hey, let's look at the 10 board members that proudly proclaim their support of Bobby Kotick.
Right.
And this idea of how the whole like chairman, the whole board, boards of companies, how kind of incestuous that is, where it's like, oh, these guys, this person's on the board of 6 different companies.
Right.
This person's, like, they're not, it's just this idea that, the idea that they would be supportive of him. It's like, well, of course, because they're all like that too, or at least enough of them are, one of the shocking reveals was that, and you can draw from this what you will, but right.
I think I know where you're pointing. Yeah.
One of the things that they mention is, hey, that guy Jeffrey Epstein had Bobby Kotick's name in his little book, and at least 1 or 2 of the other board members. Right now, that does not say anything on its face. However, when we know what Jeffrey Epstein did and what being in his black book may have meant for some people, you're like, wow, these really are just like, it's like all these, shitty people that probably all meet each other at shitty underage sex parties or whatever.
Illegal underage sex parties. Let's
You
be
know,
clear.
and then they install each other into the boards of companies, and then maybe they use their influence to get like their family members jobs at these companies. It is really disheartening because, you know, you see these industries, these video game industries, especially like, gosh, you know, if you follow the industry, a lot of these are just, you know, people that got together back in the oldie days and just like, let's make
Video games seem to be hot.
yeah, let's make some video games. And a lot of these, you know, there's a lot of like labors of love.
Yeah.
And then you start to see some of the, you know, time and time again, these companies basically get just kind of, you know, gutted and overtaken by companies like Activision. Or Blizzard. There's just some story I've heard that really the problem was Activision. It's like when they rolled into town is really when they hollowed out any goodness that Blizzard may have had. Is basically
Right. I mean, as is evidenced in more recent news where Overwatch had to rename a character because they named characters after people that worked for them, which is just a bad idea in general. It's just like it gets hairy when you start, you know, reaching outside the narrative to if something happens, you have to mitigate that problem, which, I mean, Blizzard seemed to be wrapped up in that pretty deeply by the time Overwatch came out, at least. But one of the things that kind of popped up in this discussion, because we could sit here and shit talk Bobby Kotick all day, and I have no problem with that. But one of the things I've been thinking about, and some of the discourse I've seen on social media, specifically Twitter, actually, has been like the role of games journalism, right? Because a lot of
it's all about ethics in video game journalism.
I didn't want to bring it up, but actually, but I did. I haven't seen a lot of vitriol because I don't follow those people on social media, but like, it has been interesting to see a lot of journalists that I do follow, or people retweeting journalists in games journalism, that are explicitly coming out and saying like, I support the people walking out from Actiblizz. I support the people calling for Bobby Kotick's resignation. What's interesting about it is like, to me, it comes across as like video games journalism is still such like a small group of people where journalists step out saying this actually matters, where it actually can, I'm not going to say it can influence anything, but it's like, oh, I'm just going to pull a name out of thin air here, but Polygon or Vice Games are coming out and saying, we support the workers at Activision Blizzard. I can't say it. Activision in their call to have Bobby Kotick removed from his position of power. Because like, if you know 7 p.m. anchor from MSNBC says that, like, does it really matter? No, it's like, that's just, it's performative. It's rhetoric, and maybe it is in that situation. But in the case of games journalism, seeing all these journalists stand up and speak out actually kind of has to me, it feels like it has a stronger impact. And I don't really have a guiding question here, but it has been, it's more like an observation of saying like, it's cool to see games journalism actually coalesce and be like, yeah, we have a responsibility here, not just to report the news, but to good night and good luck kind of thing, right? It's like, it's these journalism seeing something bad happening, and we can't just report it. We have to actually say, no, this person is bad. This should change. And it kind of feels like perhaps a moment of sea change in that industry, where maybe video games journalism is maturing. Whether it actually influences the outcome, I don't know, but it's cool as an observer just to kind of see it happen and be mature and thoughtful and focused.
I was kind of shocked when I think it was Kotaku did the article about the board members, because it wasn't anything, salacious, and honestly, who the board members are.
It is naming names, right? But
it literally is saying, here are 10 people. Here's what their name is and what they do, right? What their other jobs are, and also in some cases other scandals these people are associated with.
Right. There's like good journalism going on in that article in a website called Kotaku. Like, that's the crazy part.
And for me, it's, reading that kind of thing, it's just knowing, because honestly, we hear so much about, the board did X, Y, and Z, and you kind of just get used to hearing about the board, and you never really, like, it's not something that I think about a lot of, like, wait, these are people that are driving the direction of a company,
right?
Especially right now, when they're fully supporting their golden boy, Bobby. And just to have a news game journalism website just say, like, all right, let's talk about who those people are. Yeah. Bring to light who those people are. And, like, I'm not a shareholder of ActiBliz. Actually, the one thing I thought was funny was when I talked about shareholders, and it sounds like it's entirely like the vast majority of ActiBliz stock is owned by, like, funds and stuff, right? Like,
oh, actually, you bring up a good point. I'd like to reverse my decision here. Activision Blizzard is being unfairly maligned right here. I think that they are a good company, a fair company, and we should give Bobby Kotick a second chance.
Oh, did you just find out that you're a shareholder?
No. I don't own shares in Activision Blizzard. I own shares in BP Oil. Anyway, moving on.
But I mean, it's just that thing of kind of giving it, some identity, right? And so we see the kind of people that are supporting this, and they even say in their thing, oh, well, he's really trying to turn the company around, right? We're going to have a zero tolerance policy. It's like, what about zero tolerance for him? How much tolerance does he get? Because it sounds like he's not only has he done it once, he's been doing this awful shit a lot. Right. Apparently, one of the things they say, this is always, when you hear this, you always have to think about it, because we don't necessarily know what it means. But there's the report that he threatened to kill someone, right? And I say that, like, the reason why I say is because that could mean lots of different things, but still, the CEO of a video game company threatens to kill someone. That report goes out, and the board says, "Oh no, he's doing good. He's doing good." Which, comically, their share price is dropping like a thing that drops,
right? Like a feather in a vacuum.
And I mean, this is the same Bobby Kotick that basically laid off 8% of Blizzard staff to get a stock bump before a shareholders meeting. Right. This is the kind of stuff we see a lot, and why, I get very skeptical of publicly traded companies generally, although not that publicly traded or privately held companies are innocent, right? Sure. There's something about they're doing it for the dollar that I think is really bothering me.
It's interesting to see or try to piece together the narrative here, because I remember a couple of weeks ago, I'm guessing that Activision Blizzard, I keep trying. I've been seeing in the last few weeks leading up to this, it seems like ActiBliz knew about these stories that were coming out now, because I think it was literally a couple weeks ago when news reports are coming out like, oh, Bobby Kotick is taking a pay cut in solidarity with, the trying times of a pandemic world. And like, he's like trying to do major PR moves to kind of maybe ameliorate the oncoming storm, to quote Doctor Who. Whether that worked, I don't think so. I don't think it really did. But it's also an interesting story coming out of this in the face of a lot of the other news with regard to video games, and honestly a lot of nerd fields right now, with especially in the realm of unionization and trying to give the workers of companies a voice, a say, just an opportunity to bargain so that they can have, successful careers in their own right, instead of being disposable workers. It'll be interesting to see kind of how, especially video game worker unionization goes forward after a story like this, and especially in the aftermath of whatever does happen to Bobby Kotick, because as of this recording, nothing has happened yet, I don't think.
No.
As much as people calling for his resignation, to the point, like we said earlier, of ActiBliz workers walking out.
Well, and I think you're right. The fact that this all happens kind of with the backdrop of a lot of union efforts. Not only, we mentioned Paizo having their union. There's also, Image Comics has their comic book artists union that's trying to form, or is it artists?
I don't think it's the artists. I think it's just the employees of Image Comics. So the admin kind of staff, and like editorial staff, and obviously just, printing staff, publishing staff, that kind of stuff. And yeah, the blow up with that is that Image Comics kind of came out originally saying like, hey, you know, workers are cool, and then these workers said, hey, how about you recognize our union? And Image is like, no, how about no. It's
right.
like, oh, Image, come on. Like, you were created as a company because the artists that worked for the big two were dissatisfied with the level of compensation and recognition that those big companies were not giving them, and so they made their own company to stand against those big giants. And then when your workers try to get recognition, you say no.
Yeah,
come on.
Well, but I mean, even outside of entertainment, right? John Deere had a strike going on, which I believe they actually the contract was agreed to the benefit of the union, I believe. But we also see, also a lot of union efforts. I know there's also, was it Alaska Airlines? I think their pilots are having a union dispute. There's a Starbucks in, was it Buffalo, New York, that's having a union drive right now.
Yeah, I heard about that.
To the point where even the John Oliver on his show, he actually last week the episode was about unions, and more importantly, the great efforts that companies go to try to prevent to bust them. Yeah. So it is, it is a really, to me, a fascinating thing that we are seeing a lot of this stuff happen. I mean, because here's the thing, right? You said that Kotick, right? This year, right? He took a pay cut. He halved his base pay from $1.75 million to $875,000. However, he was still awarded nearly $150 million in stock. So his 2021 planned compensation, 150 some million, right? It's like, don't tell me that, like, oh, he took a little pay cut. Not to quote my favorite philosopher,
one Tina Turner, from her role in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. But Bobby, we don't need another hero. And that's the thing. Like, the thing that depresses me is that what is the consequence for Kotick if the walkout gets its way? He gets taken off the board. So what? He's still a kajabillionaire.
Right. He steps down and he resigns, let's say.
So he becomes a consultant or a lobbyist, or
a board member of other companies, right? That's right. He can go become. I mean, I've discussed personally with someone who even talked about, oh, maybe I'll just retire from my job and just become a professional board member. Right. That's people who do that, and you get compensated, and you do, like what's the effort to be a board member of ActiBliz? You have a meeting every quarter? I don't know,
Right. You could probably fall asleep in that meeting.
You could say stupid shit at that meeting, right? So it's this idea that even if he resigns in disgrace, he's already a billionaire.
Right. There's no consequence.
Or a million. He's a millionaire, but a 100 millionaire, right? It's, I don't know. And what was it? Because they already had the issue where earlier this year they put a woman into a leadership position.
Yep. And then she
resigns, and you're like, oh, what's going on?
Within a month or two or something.
And it was basically that it was because she was treated
poorly.
Poorly, yeah. And so even if Kotick resigns, what if they'll just get Kotick Model 2, right? I have no confidence that ActiBliz won't just dig up another piece of shit, Hey, maybe Elon Musk wants to be the CEO, right? That's a bad decision. It's the kind of thing ActiBliz really stands for. Bad decisions.
It makes sense at this point, but
maybe there's is there a war criminal out there that wants to be a CEO of a game company? I hear Blizzard's into hiring that war criminals.
Giselle, what's her name?
She's part of the family.
Ghislaine Maxwell, that's what it is. Yeah. Jeffrey Epstein's number one.
So it's just such a wild thing, because I think of Blizzard. Blizzard specifically, Activision, I think, has always been a turd of a company, but Blizzard used to be known as this company like, yeah, man, it was Blizzard. They made good stuff. They, although someone pointed out they haven't published a new game in
Overwatch, probably
5 years, 2016. Yeah. All they've done since then are expansions and
when did Heroes of the Storm come out? Not that anybody remembers that game ever came out in the first place.
I think that may have been 2016.
There we go.
Hey, by the way, I played that game. It was plenty fun.
I heard it was good. But the other thing, and I don't want to delve into just like nerdy speculation and bitching here, but this kind of feeds into sort of story that fans have been telling for years, that especially when this kind of acquisition started happening of big companies buying up smaller studios, or successful studios, honestly, because they were so successful, where people had worries about Blizzard being corrupted by Activision. Well, self-fulfilling prophecy there, I guess. BioWare being bought by EA. Well, what is BioWare
Spoiler.
At this point, right?
I mean, that story, Maxis
as well, right?
The creators of SimCity, right? Origin, creators of Ultima. That's actually one where the former CEO of Origin will tell you that's exactly what EA did.
I'm not saying that all big companies are bad necessarily, because I'm not going to say, I'm about to say Microsoft hasn't been proven to be anything bad, but but they have been. But Microsoft has been buying up not prolific, but renowned studios in the last 10 years. Sony's been doing a little bit of catch up, but Microsoft buying up companies like Double Fine, like Obsidian
and Bethesda.
Like, yikes. Like, this is like seeing what we're dealing with Activision, Blizzard, and EA. Like, this isn't, and BioWare. Like, this is not good precedent. And it makes me scared I don't know if scared is a strong word. I'm not like, oh gosh, I hope BioWare comes out of this okay. Like, it's just a company in the end. And the best part about the video game culture right now is that people leave companies. Like, that's the thing with BioWare. Like, the people that were kind of associated with the big BioWare properties have actually left. They're not there anymore. But some of those people have started new companies, and that's the thing. They don't own people. Oh, I hope not. But
speaking of Elon Musk,
right. The nice thing about the video game industry specifically is that, like, if you follow creators, not companies, then actually it's less depressing because people move on. People found new companies and found new ventures, and they will still be making games. But yeah, maybe the next Mass Effect might not be that good, because the last one wasn't, even though I enjoyed it. It's presenting video game fans with an interesting proposition of actually getting to know who makes these games. Something I think we might have even talked about or touched on in previous episodes, where, like, there's a lot of people that, I mean, especially right now, a lot of brand loyalty from fans, without knowing who, like, what makes you love these properties, these movies, these games, these comics, these whatever, are actually the specific people and their creative visions. And when they leave the company, are you aware of it? Why aren't you following them? Why are you sticking with Marvel? Why are you sticking with Blizzard? Why are you sticking up for these big companies that are owned by publicly traded companies, right? If anything, if I can be optimistic for a minute, it's maybe this is making gamers more aware of the people that actually make these games, instead of, outside of just the companies that make the properties that they love. And I think if gamers become more aware of that, then actually we'll be fine. because it's the people that make the games it's the people that make the games special, not the companies. And not the brands, honestly.
Right.
Except with the case of Mighty Number 9. That was bad decision.
Well, was it? But that was also a case where the name wasn't actually the name you thought it was.
That's true.
Right?
That's true. But
it's like, here's the guy, and I think we've talked about this. That's one where, the guy who developed Mega Man. Well, actually, not quite. Right. It's a guy that worked on Mega Man.
Indeed. Because then we can point to, like, Bloodstained, which is a very fun little game, right?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, and it's just like with anything, if you follow certain writers and, you realize, oh, maybe the writer wasn't actually what I thought, maybe it was actually the co-writer that was doing a lot of the heavy lifting, or especially like with television. I think that's a good one where if you find like, oh, I like this creator, and then you start to realize like, actually, maybe they're not as good as I thought,
Like if you're disheartened with the fact that Joss Whedon turns out to be an asshole, instead follow people like Marty Noxon and all the other writers that worked with Whedon on his various shows, and they are actually interesting, cool people that are still working in the industry. Go find their shows, because they're the ones that actually had the good ideas and the clever voices that were just stamped, which just had the Joss Whedon stamp put on top of them. I'm trying to find optimism here in the face of defeat.
Well, and the one thing I like about with video games, although we're so used to the AAA, billion dollar or whatever games, that you still see people that go out there and make games with small teams, right? Like if there are people out there that, hey, they worked at Blizzard, there are ways for them to just go out and make their own thing. Right. It's not super easy. Like it still takes work, but it's not insurmountable, right? It's the tools are out there, the stuff's out there. So there are ways for people, and for us as fans to enjoy things people make, but also for people that want to make stuff to be able to make it. I think of like, I've seen quite a few people that like, well, they used to work at Activision, and then they finally saved up enough money to start doing their own thing. So I try to be optimistic.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, in the face of 2021, that's a good idea. Just try to be optimistic. Find the way this could result in good things. And in the case of video games, like you said, there's still so much opportunity for people to leave bad situations and create new good situations. That it's just a matter of taking a little extra effort to learn their names and keep abreast of when they're releasing stuff, whether it's through crowdfunding or just through press releases and stuff like that. It's a lot of good games out there not being made by those big companies. And this is your number one source for that. We talk about indie games all the time. Well,
there's so many indie games out there.
I know. Okay, and I should say number one source, a bit high. I think in terms of indie game news, maybe we're the 8th or 9th. Not the 14th. We're the 14th in just general nerd news. But indie games specifically, 8th or 9th.
I mean, hey, that new indie game, Skyrim, came out last week. So.
You're such a corporate shill. So if you, dear listeners, have any thoughts about the topics we discussed this week, feel free to leave your thoughts as comments on the page for this episode at forallintents.net.
You can also post your comments or engage in conversations with other listeners on our Facebook page.
You can find us on other social media, which means you can find us at our respective handles. On Twitter, you can find Andrew at ProfoundDark. You can find me at DBethel. You can also find us on Instagram, where you can find Andrew at ProfoundBrick and me and my work at DBethelComics.
While you're at our website at forallintents.net, you can take a look at our YouTube page by clicking on the link in the corner that says YouTube. There you'll find videos.
We use 2 tracks of music for our show. One is called Disco Medusae. The other is called District 4. And they're both written and performed by Kevin McLeod of the Clan McLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire.
You can find his music at incompetech.filmmusic.io, and that's all licensed under the Creative Commons 4.0 by attribution license.
If you'd like the show and like to help us out, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the show using whichever podcasting service you happen to use, whether it's something like the Apple Podcast app or Spotify, 2 places where you can find our show. What would help us out more, though, would be to go to their storefront and leaving some sort of review. Whether a text review or using their proprietary metric will help spread the word to new potential listeners through the magic of algorithms. Andrew?
Yes, sir.
I've got 3 possible outros here.
Make it so.
Which is now our new outro. But they're all kind of like downers. One is Mel Gibson is directing Lethal Weapon 5.
And strangely enough, the villain is going to be the bunch of Jewish bankers.
Or broken hips. The Cowboy Bebop live action reviews is another possible topic. Or the new Ghostbusters movie is releasing NFTs.
Finally, giving Walter Peck the vindication he deserves. The Ghostbusters really are wrecking the environment. And I will actually say, just Walter Peck was the EPA guy from the original Ghostbusters film. And for those that don't know, there's a video. God, I have to find the link where they discuss how the original Ghostbusters is actually surprisingly conservative.
Yeah, sure.
How like it actually resonates. It is a product of its time, where it's like the government is the bad guy. These are just guys trying to make their way in the world. They have literally unlicensed lethal weapons they carry around.
Nuclear, yeah, right.
So it's an interesting thing, and of course, coupled with Peter Venkman's basically misogyny in the film, it is like looking back, it's like wow, just a weird thing to think about. But anyway,
right? Just give me the highlights from that movie. And speaking as a person married to an environmental scientist, no comment. So until, dear listeners, busting ghosts doesn't impact the environment, good luck with that. I'm D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And for all intents and purposes,
that was a podcast.
We use 2 tracks of music for our show. One is called Disco Medusae. The other is called what was it called? Okay. We use 2 tracks of fucking Christ.
We use words.
I was going to say order. We use 2 tracks of shit for our show, but that's really disrespectful.
That's
to
disrespectful. No,
composer.
That's
button the thing and the button.
Butts. Lord Butt Patine.
We need to figure out ways to institutionalize accountability so that people can't be megalomaniacs. Mm-hmm. That doesn't seem like a hard ask.
You'd think, but
fucking feudalism reigns, I guess. And they're like, wow, this is bad. We should not play this game.
Oh, some people like that shit, man.
Good for them. Good for them.
Good for them.